Welcome to Divine Decode. I'm your host, Pragya, and today's conversation is one I feel so many of us need right now. We are joined by Elizabeth Makepeace, who is a natural success coach, an intuitive activator who has spent nearly 3 decades guiding people from self-doubt to self-trust, helping them awaken their inner power and consciously create lives filled with freedom and alignment. You know those moments when life it feels like it's running you instead of the other way around? Well, today we are going to dive into how to shift from living on autopilot to becoming the conscious creator of your own story. So sit back, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. First of all, thank you, Elizabeth, for being here. I know it's morning over there and it's hot sometimes, but thank you for being on the show and thank you for just being here.
It's my pleasure, Pragya, and very interested and looking forward to our conversation today.
That's so great. And yeah, even I am looking forward to it. Okay, Elizabeth. So as you know, I mentioned it to you earlier that we would talk about conscious creating. So whenever you talk about it, what does it really mean? Because let's start with the basics, whatever it is. And see, many of us, we often feel like, something happening to us rather than thought through us, wake up, work, repeat, all of these other things that constantly go on. So how do we break that cycle and how do we realize, that, yeah. So basically, I have just two questions in my mind, which is one is conscious creating and how do we implement it in our daily lives?
So conscious creating is something that we all need to just wake up and recognize that we are creating our reality. Like every single moment of every single day, we are beaming out energy and it's transmitting like a radio station. And through that transmission, we are signaling the universe what it is that we want to create and what how we want to live. And so generally what's happening is our unconscious has been conditioned to live in the past. It's actually the very function of our unconscious is to wire our neural pathways to survival. And it does that by looking at what's going on in our current reality from when we were born, and especially from about 0 to 7, we have a nervous system and a brainwave frequency of being hypnotized. So everything that we're seeing, everything we're experiencing is being inputted into sort of like the software of the computer being put together and programmed. So then the computer can live for a long period of time. And so we listen to all this information, we take it all in with our energy field, with our eyes, with our ears. We listen, we hear, and we experience it, everything that's going on around us. So our family, our culture, the time frame that we are living in, what period of time, the generation that we're in. And all of those things, the peers, the people that are around us, all of those things are taken in and we make decisions about who we are according to our world. And so from 0 to 7, we make those assessments without any filter. And then now they get locked into our programming and we start living by those rules, by those programs. And that's how, unless we do something about that and change those opinions, change those behaviors, change the way that program is, and it's unconscious, right? So sometimes we're not even aware that we're doing it. We are living just like in this robotic state, being conditioned by what we're watching on TV or social media, all of those things. We're being conditioned by everything around us instead of taking ownership of our own thoughts, our beliefs, and making different decisions about how we want to behave, who we want in our life, what we want to experience, what we want to achieve, the results we want by the end of our lifetime, all of those things. And so unless you're conscious and taking your power back, everything that's happening is happening unconsciously. We, generally in society, people think that everything is just happening to them, not for them. And so that's how conscious creation works, because you start recognizing that actually you have a say, you are the power, you are the one that is building this boat, building this life. And through that process, you start then making conscious choices, and you start recognizing what's happening to you in your life and making different decisions if it's something that you don't want, and living in flow with the things that you do want.
Love it. And thank you. Thank you for the clear framework that you've given. Yes, that was so insightful. Thank you. So, do you think that most of us, we are unknowingly just creating lives that we don't truly want, simply because, we never stop to question the script that we've been following? For example, we often say, "Let's let our life go with the flow," and all of those questions. But, we are unknowingly in those ways just ignoring what we want from ourselves. What potentials do we carry? And, how better things can be if we take hold of our own lives. So what are your views on it?
That's exactly right. If we don't take ownership, it's not only our own life that we are locked into, and as you said, the script, which is such a great way of putting it, because we're not just living this life that we're experiencing now. In our actual genetics, in our DNA, is all the information of every life that we've had before. So any past lives that we've had, and also all of the generations in our bloodline that is in our family lineage as well. And that's, the study of epigenetics is proving scientifically that that's the case, that we have genes within us. They did a big study on, I don't know if it's still going on, but it was a continuous study on Holocaust survivor generations, the families that were in the current reality. And they discovered that there was a lot of, like a huge amount of children that were, the ancestors of Holocaust survivors that had great lives, healthy, happy, nothing that could indicate that there was any sort of trauma, that all had the same issues. And that was, issues with confined spaces and loud noises and like chronic PTSD for no particular reason. And they discovered that it was because of this genetic imprint from the trauma of their ancestors that survived the Holocaust. So we're also dealing with the weight of the past from our generations before. And so what we're here to do right now in this time frame is we are at a particular time in our human evolution to make different decisions and to let go of that weight. There are modalities like I do a process called recoding, and, I'm the founder of the Ascendance Code. And through that process, we clear those generational patterns, any past lives, anything that's within the DNA, and it actually recodes those moments, those patterns, that script that you were talking about. And now you've got like this blank canvas that you can, like the weight has lifted. You feel spiritually light. And through that process, now you can make decisions about what it is that you want to, what did your soul actually come down to experience? What is it that you want to do without this heaviness that that you were born with?
Wonderful example of Holocaust that you've given. And yes, I truly, truly believe whatever you've said. And that was insightful again. Thank you for sharing that with us. Also, Elizabeth, when we talk about the Ascendance Code that you developed, which is a tool that it sounds both mystical and practical at the very same time for me. So if someone, they feel lost or stuck in a version of themselves that they've outgrown, because most of us in our lives, because of daily errands or, hustle bustle and all of those heartbreaks and issues that we face. We genuinely do feel stuck in our lives most of the times. So how does the Ascendance Code, how does this code help them reconnect with who they really are and finding their own selves?
The Ascendance Code is a really practical way of getting your power back, because we don't recognize how often we give it away. There's those moments that seem pretty obvious, like you're in a relationship that you feel like you don't get a say, you don't get heard, you don't have choices of how you want to live, you're looking after everyone, you've got all these responsibilities from looking after the family and the weight of, the responsibility of everyone else, and you just don't have any time to think about what it is that you want, right? Those things, they're sort of obvious, but we've even got those types of situations where even with our friendships, even with our beliefs, we give our power away to those things. I actually worked with a woman last night, and she came onto the call, and she's got a beautiful friend that she's been working with just recently. They both decided that they were going to work together to build a business, like a collaboration. One's a woman that does human design, the other one does AI images and all of those things. They get on extremely well, all of these things. And the woman that does human design also has another business that's like MLM, a health product. And she started telling me about how all of these little things that keep happening, and the last one that happened was one of her friends, so my client's friend, came in, was all prepared to buy this product or this service that they were collaborating with. And before she knew it, the other woman had talked her into buying her health product instead. And she said, I don't know what to do about it because, I really needed the money. We've been spending all this time working together to do this thing. And now she's gone and taken basically the business away from me. And I don't know what to do about it. And so we had to talk about it. And there was no boundaries put in place. There was no agreement. There was no structure at the very start of how they were going to work together. And the other woman, I don't think really knew that she was doing anything wrong. And so if we don't put in all of the pieces of what it is that we want to create, if we don't have a clear picture and a pathway, then chaos happens just so quickly and so easily because our unconscious just gets in the way and starts taking over. So this woman was just thinking of herself, right? Because now I'm building this other business over here, not actually thinking about the integrity of the relationship, the business, and all of those things. In the process, it came out that my client actually doesn't want to do the business in the first place. She wants to build she's actually a professor at university, and she wants to move into becoming an international professor in the US. And she didn't even realize that she wanted that because it's been a childhood dream. But being able to pull that apart with her just by listening to her story about this collaboration and just asking the right questions, and then being able to clear that with recoding, which is, with recoding, what we do is we go to the source where the codes are in the first place. And just like your podcast is called Decode, right? It's really sort of like decoding. We take that code out that doesn't serve anymore, that is an old habit, an old pattern, an old belief, an old definition, and we don't replace it. What we do is we shift that code, and because we've shifted that code, what happens is more of our authentic light, our soul's truth is able to, it's almost like taking a little bit of mud off a window, right? And as you take that mud off, the sun can come and shine through that glass again and into the house. And so the more you clear those codes out of the way that just don't serve us anymore, the more light we as a vessel can contain. and the more our soul can communicate with us from, our intuitive wisdom and our inner knowing to what exactly we're here to do. In this case with my client, I mean, I could see it. She'd gone from bawling her eyes out to when I picked up that there was something. I said, how long have you wanted to be a professor? And she's like, I wanted to be an international professor all my life since I was a child. And you could just see it in her face. She said, but I just don't believe in myself that I'm good enough. And, that belief of not being good enough was so powerful that here she is as a single mum now, doing all these things, feeling responsible for everybody else and not following her dream. And, these are the things that the Ascendance Code does, is to clear the things that are getting in the way so that you can live your fullest potential.
Oh my God, I love that. How beautifully you've explained it. And to be very honest, I love that concept. I have this one thought, it reminds us, that transformation, it is actually not reserved for a chosen few, right? It is possible for anyone who's willing to take first brave steps inwards, right? And so beautifully
Absolutely.
you explained it to us. Also, Elizabeth, those moments when you feel so sure about something and then suddenly your mind, it jumps in with all the what ifs, right? For example, I'll just share a petty example wherein there is this picture that you took of yourself and you like it at this moment and you really, really want to post it on your Instagram. But as soon as you as soon as you select that picture, there are so many what ifs that come. What if this person judges it that way? What if my nose is looking bigger in this? Or what if my skin color is looking so dull? So, these things, they keep on happening. So when you feel excited about starting a new project, or even there are days when you do not feel so good, what is that thought, and how do we actually know whether it's fear holding us or it's the intuition? So basically, what I'm trying to ask is that the thoughts and these what ifs that keep on coming, whether about failing, whether about being judged, or whether about people laughing on us, are these intuitions, or this is just the fear which is holding us back?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's just the fear, because generally, in most cases, that very first thought of, I'm going to use this picture for Instagram, that inspired action. So you have that thought, you think, yep, this is the right one, and you post it. That is your intuition. That's your inspired connection with your higher self. All the things that happen after that, and they happen so quickly and so subtly, like within microseconds, your unconscious is coming in to assess the damage that it proposes may stop you from surviving, right? Because that's its whole job and role, is to make sure that you survive life. And so, way back when we were living in caves or whatever, and it was, there's a tiger outside the cave, and so there was fear, there was, the fight flight process. Now we use that, or that, our body doesn't have to worry about the tiger anymore, but it's now judgment on social media, right? And so the moment that we post that, all of those assessments and labels that we put on ourselves and the fear that we're experiencing about what other people will think is our unconscious making decisions based on our old programming from being judged when we were a child, or ridiculed, or not feeling good enough because we were neglected as a kid, or whatever it might be. And so when you can actually listen to that first voice and take action and just tell the other voice, hey, I get it. You've got my back, and I love that you have been here to support me all this time, because it's stopped you from making wrong choices of being hurt and abused at school and ridiculed by kids, by moving out of a situation or whatever, by actually having a conversation with it and saying, we don't have to worry anymore. it's okay, like actually have a conversation with it and grow it up, make it realize that now we're, 20, 30, 40, 50 or whatever, we're not 7 years old anymore. And you just help it to recognize that you will survive and that those thoughts just aren't necessary anymore because you are good enough and, you are worthy of being on social media like everybody else, using the same example, right?
So true. I totally agree with whatever you've said again, because that is true. There are so many voices that just keep on bugging us all the time. And those are so irritating sometimes. But yes, there has to be that one voice again, which, basically asks the other one to shut up and, just for us to realize that no, this is just putting us down. And yeah, so beautifully explained. Also, do you think that self-doubt, it sometimes has a hidden purpose? Like maybe it's not always the villain. So basically, we're contradicting whatever we've talked about before. So self-doubt, it sometimes also, helps in building us, it helps in giving us the reality checks that we often do not receive from outside because of all the buttering that happens and people thinking that we feel bad. So, what do you have to say on that? Or do you think the other way?
No, I totally agree. And this is where it's extremely important to recognize and start building a relationship with yourself. Self-awareness is powerful, and it's a tool, that whole know thyself is a tool to recognize when your body, because, your body, your mind and your spirit are all connected. And so when you're going down the wrong path, there are times where, your unconscious is moving you into a place of, maybe you'd call it self-doubt, or just a gentle nudge that you need to redirect into a different way, right? And so it's recognizing the difference between what is self-doubt, where it's putting you down and it's a fear, and knowing the difference between that and just being redirected into, a different, not going down that rabbit hole, for example, or, it's a gentle nudge from your higher self, from your intuition, to steer clear from a particular person because, that's not going to be the right path for you. And it's a very subtle difference, and it's important to know yourself. And that's why, things like, mindfulness, meditation, processes like recoding, and, really deeply getting to know yourself, you can start recognizing those subtle differences.
So true, so true. Such an eye opener it was. And yeah, actually looking at self doubt as a signpost, rather than the stop sign, I can say that also sometimes help. Also, now you talk about things like alchemy and subconscious decoding, right? And these often are hard vocabulary, or I would say they just sound a bit magical, it feels that they have something behind it, some, philosophy behind it. But your work, it also connects it with science, right? So
Yeah.
when I read about how our thoughts, how they can actually change our brain chemistry, it sometimes actually blows my mind because, these are two very different things. How can we relate science to our brain? Although it can be done, but it's a bit tricky. So, how do you bring these two words together? And yes, can you please explain it in your ways?
The way I see things, and, I've been on this journey for 28 years now. And so I spiritually woke up, not in a way that I was looking for. I wasn't looking to have an experience of spirituality. It was something that sort of happened to me. I had a friend that was hassling me to go to a psychic, and I didn't believe in them. And so I ended up going because she just wouldn't stop hassling me to go. I went and saw this woman, and through the process, the woman said, you can do what I do, but obviously you don't know it. And through that, I went home and I started having, spirits touching my back and, brushing my face and all these things. And for about 3 days. And I was like, what on earth is going on? I rang her back and she said, they're just happy you've woken up. It'll settle down and, you can live your life or whatever. I wanted to go back, but she wouldn't let me. She said no. And so, I was left by myself to work it out. Now, my head is quite scientific, like the quantum physics and epigenetics, and I got into string theory at one stage. And, my family, both of my brothers are into that sort of world as well. But here I was having an experience of spirit, which, in normal day and, day-to-day society is not something that it's starting to become more accepted, but it's not very accepted in, normal day-to-day world. And so for me, I was trying to understand that world through the lens of science, because I think that that's actually part of my mission here as my journey as a soul, is to bridge those two worlds. So I would hear something scientifically and start understanding it from a spiritual perspective. Alchemy is something that we have mysticized all of these things, but actually when you look back in history, they were part of everyday life way back before religion and science sort of came to where it is now. There were mystics and people used to believe in the gods, that they were, angry because there was lightning and all of those things. And so we have been conditioned out of that magic. And truly, science is, when you really look at the depths of science now, science is actually starting to recognize the mystic, and science is very close to going, well, actually, in fact, they have, like, there's the whole theory of the ghost in the machine, where they are recognizing that there's some sort of intelligence that is overriding all of us and what we do. So science and spirituality are coming together. And all of the things that I have understood from a spiritual perspective, I can actually look at the science and go, oh, that's what that's talking about. There's a process called the double-slit experiment. And what that is basically when you're looking at a particle, when you're observing something, it becomes a particle. Stop observing it, it becomes a wave. Well, when you're creating, if you're focused on what you're creating, then it becomes a singularity. It becomes a focal point. You then create that. It's the law of attraction. But if you don't focus on what you want to create, then it's a possibility, but you're being influenced by everybody else's focus instead, and what is on social media or the news or the ad that's trying to get you to buy the gadget or whatever it is. And so you get influenced by what somebody else's focus is. So alchemy is all about focusing on what you want to create. And, you can look at that from a scientific point of view as well, because it's something that science is now starting to have evidence of.
And I actually, believe that it is finally catching up to what spirituality has been saying for centuries, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, and our thoughts, our beliefs, even our mind, our brain, everything is, relating to science, and science is actually catching up to it, which is actually very, very nice, because, now we have proofs for it, and it is something that everybody can say that it has been going on. The practices have been going on since a very good time, but now we also have science to prove it, so that a lot more people, they are also getting aware about it, which is a very, very good thing, right?
Absolutely. I agree. The more people that recognize that we're creating our reality, the more we'll wake up to this reality that we're creating is not very, there's not a lot of equality. We're damaging the environment. Let's change and make a different choice, right? And so the more that we wake up to this, the more we realize that we can have this beautiful heaven on earth that we all aspire for.
So true, so true. Also, yes, let's talk to the person who is listening right now and who is feeling stuck, or maybe they've been in the same job for years, or they feel like that every decision it is filled with constant doubt or pressure or stress, or might be disconnected from their relationships, or they might be facing issues. And even if not, what is the first step that they can take today? And that one basic step that you feel they should take so that they start their journey towards transforming their life.
The very first step is recognizing that you have a choice. And that is challenging for somebody who's job or circumstances with family or whatever it might be. Just spending whenever you're in a situation and you can feel right that moment, you're standing in front of somebody else and you're feeling powerless. Just have that moment to say, wait a minute, I've got a choice here. I've got a choice. I've just got a choice. And continuously recognizing that you've got a choice, that in itself is enough to start building a new frequency within you. And so just saying that over and over and over again, I have a choice here. Eventually, that consciousness and that recognition will move into some form of change. It's inevitable because the more you recognize that you have a choice and that you can change, the more you start building self-assurance within you. And it might not feel like it at first. You might have to do this for months. But as you do it, the more you recognize that and your consciousness changes, you watch your world change as you start making different choices. You may even start standing up and saying, no, I don't want you talking to me that way. It doesn't feel nice for me, and whatever it might be, things will start changing. And that just one simple decision and awareness can make huge changes in your life.
Love that. Love that. That was so great. And I actually, ask our listeners to please listen to whatever Elizabeth has shared with us today, because those insights, you won't get it anywhere else. And for the ones who actually do not believe in most of these things, I totally get you. But if you want proofs about, we also have spoken about it today. Make sure that you connect to it, you resonate with it. And yes, also what an inspiring journey this has been with Elizabeth today. And it basically reminded us that life, it isn't happening to us. It is responding through us. So basically, it is us who is in the main picture, and it's basically us. Nothing is going to happen to you until and unless you make sure that you are doing something for yourself. The moment we start creating with intention and instead of living by default, everything it just shifts. I'm your host, Pragya Malvia, and if today's conversation lit even the smallest spark in you, let it be this. You don't need the whole map to begin, okay? You just need the courage to take the first conscious step. Until next time, keep creating with awareness, trust, and heart. I'll sign off.